Did you ever find your headphones?
Yes, I did find them actually.
Who do you think hid them? Who do we need to fight?
What were you saying?
I said now that you've got your headphones on. Who do we need to fight? Who do we think hid them? Where were they?
So Jeff Walker definitely came into the studio and took my headphones.
If you had given me one guess, 100% Jeff Walker.
Yep.
100%. All right, Jeff Walker. You come in, sometimes you just barge in, you're like, hey, I'm here. And I'm like, cool. Like, what are you doing here? Which is fine. Jeff's a delight. But can you please leave my guy's headphones alone? He's a professional radio producer. He's got things to do.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you.
You're welcome.
My favorite story is, I think we were playing Cincinnati. Was it Cincinnati?
That's not what depends on the story, but maybe we were playing Cincinnati.
So Logan catches this touchdown.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was Cincinnati. Yep.
It was Cincinnati. So we put in this play, and it was like, I think we called it Hoss Juke or something like that. I can't remember what we called it in that offense, but Logan's on a seam, right? So he's our vertical threat, taking the top off the defense.
Digging out, guys.
We're talking in the week. I don't think we ever said it in the install with those guys, but they're like, listen, Logan's not even in the progression. He's taking the top off this thing. We're trying to work this little option route down. And they bust this coverage.
Bad.
And I mean, he is screaming wide open.
I wasn't even supposed to be on the play. They were supposed to sub somebody else in because I thought I was too slow to run this route. Just for the context here for everybody.
So he's screaming wide open. And I'm like, Matt, throw it at his back shoulder. You might hit him in stride. If you try and back shoulder him. Threw it right at him. He catches it. It was an awesome touchdown. Yeah. Just the celebration afterwards was so much fun. For me, it was always fun celebrating the touchdowns with the guys that didn't score them all the time. You know, like
take that, Julio Jones.
Yeah, and I'm not, I'm saying that, but like your role for us was you did the dirty work, and when you see guys that do the dirty work get rewarded for it, that was really cool. Something I'll never forget. The caveman. Yeah. And the caveman was in there in the end zone celebrating. It was awesome.
always, live as well on the free Odyssey app. Hope you are having a fantastic Tuesday as you tune in and you want to hear about the Ron Rivera, Eric Bieneimy comments drama. Woo! We got material today. We got things to talk about. And I have a question. Can we all just stop being so dramatic? I'm sure by now many of you have heard that Ron Rivera said some things today. And depending on whether you heard it directly, you've seen the tweets, you've had a buddy text you, whatever it is, Ron Rivera said something that was bad today. Except for I disagree with that sentiment. Ultimately, what happened today is the head coach told a pretty obvious truth about the offensive coordinator. The head coach, by the way, who most people don't like, told an obvious truth about the offensive coordinator, who everybody loves, that we all could have guessed by being out there, watching interactions, human nature, and the law of numbers, and everybody freaked the you-know-what out. So, before I get started on explaining why I think this thing that a lot of people are making into a big deal is very much not a big deal, I would like for you to hear it in full for yourself. Here is Ron Rivera today on players adapting to Eric Bienemy's intensity. Full answer, minute 8 and all.
Yeah, I mean, they have. And one of the biggest things is you know, and I had a number of guys come to me and I said, hey, just go talk to him. I said, understand what he's trying to get across to you, you know, and I think, you know, I think as they go and they talk and they listen to him, it's been enlightening for a lot of these guys. I mean, it's a whole different approach. You know, you're getting a different kind of player from the players back in the past. Especially in light of how things are coming out of college football. So a lot of these young guys, you know, they do struggle with certain things. And a lot of you also got to take for where they've been. I mean, guys coming from certain programs are used to it. Guys coming from other programs aren't as much. So, you know, us as a coach, you know, I kind of have to assimilate and get a feel for everybody. You know, Eric has an approach, and it's the way he does things, and he's not going to change, and because he believes in it. Jack has his approach. You know, having been a head coach, I think Jack has a tendency to try and figure guys out a little bit more, as opposed to, hey, this is it, this is the way it's going to be, that type of stuff. Where Eric hasn't had that experience yet.
Okay. Oh my God. Freak out. And just to be clear, Nikki Javala followed up on that.
And just that when they came to you, it was just they felt like Eric was riding them too hard, or?
Well, they just were a little concerned.
A little concerned. And we're not going to make this a criticism that this is a media thing, because the biggest freakouts I see on Twitter are fans, not media. But there are some media that are making it a big deal. I saw a tweet from Steve Weish from NFL Network, who I have a lot of respect for and does a very good job. Like kind of one of those confused memes talking about how, oh, the players who haven't won anything are upset about the style of the offensive coordinator who's been in 3 straight Super Bowls. And, oh, my God. But that's not what people are mad about. The substance here, yeah, there's something to talk about. But the dumb sports soap opera stuff that people are focusing on is, to me, absolutely mind-bendingly insane. The battle for the substance is how EB converts those players who have never experienced the level of coaching and the level of attention to detail and the level of intensity and the level of all that stuff to win. Like, how does he build that bridge so that they can join him on the winning side? That is coaching. That is the essence, the core of his job. He's got to, in his words, make some people uncomfortable to get comfortable. That was a direct quote from Eric Bieneimy today. What doesn't need to happen is a sacrifice of the player's psychological safety in their place of work in order to make that happen. So if they can go to Ron hears them, they feel validated, but he also sends them to Bieneimy, and the player and EB then talk it out and build an understanding that ultimately creates more buy-in. That is not a sign of dysfunction. That is a sign of things working. But everyone's so used to laughing at everything that happens here that it becomes this big hoopla of the idiots in D.C. and the coach that came to save them. Like, what is wrong with some of you? How absolutely insane are your workplaces that you hearing what I just described, that you hearing what Rivera said, that the person in charge, like that is that some sign that the person in charge is an idiot, not an actual competent professional. And then there's the chorus of, but he shouldn't have aired it in public. What? The competence? He answered a perfectly valid question based off many observations from all of us who've been out there in a way that displayed competence, and you're mad that he said it out loud? Because here's the thing. If I was a player, you want to know what would tick me off? Ron lying about it. If he was asked that question and he lied, you want to really have problems fester? Lie about them in the press. Tell everyone it's all sunshine and rainbows and invalidate their experiences. Because here's the thing. Overall, big point right here. No one is wrong here. EB was brought in to push people and to push this organization from a football standpoint to a place it has not been to in a long, long time. The lifetime of many of you listening, in a very literal sense. Pushing isn't passive. And when you're the person being pushed, sometimes it doesn't feel very good. That's the discomfort. That's how all of this works. But Ron's job is to preserve the culture. The culture in that building is very open. The culture there is to communicate. That is Ron's policy. It has been his policy. That is one of the strengths he has as a head coach, amongst many other things that I would consider weaknesses. That is very, very good from him, and it's something he's been about since far before he was even a head coach. That openness, though, is also Eric Bieneimy's policy. He talked about it explicitly today. He prefers to over-communicate. He has an open-door policy. He will hear out any player. That doesn't mean he will bend on his expectations. It doesn't mean he'll bend on his standard. But he'll hear you, and he'll talk to you like a human being. And by the way, just to reinforce this open thing a little bit more, the captain, Terry McLaurin, just did a podcast with some of the most revelatory statements ever from an NFL player about therapy. You think that dude doesn't endorse talking things out and being open, embracing conflict for the good? And the players are adults. Like, they're allowed to speak up if they don't like how they're being spoken to. I would argue it's part of their job. Bottling it in and exploding when you lose 2 games and it's week 4 and you're pissed off and saying then you've hated the way your head coach or your offensive coordinator in this case has talked to you since the preseason doesn't accomplish anything. Speaking up and working it out does. And that's what's been described as happening here. Like, it's imperative also, and I hope people hear me on this in a major, major way. It's imperative, remember, these are young men. The NFL is a young league. Many of them are, could still be on their parents' insurance. That's the age of human being we're talking about here. And EB is new to all of them. Ron is not in a lot of cases. Ron's job is to play intermediary. He's earned their trust in a massive organization through an unbelievable amount of tumult the last 4 years. No kidding they went to Ron. And then Ron said, you can trust Eric, go talk to Eric. And it seems like, based off how things were described today, both by Ron and by Eric, that those things got worked out. That is, and I cannot stress this enough, good leadership. The one thing I didn't like was the first bite at the end. I didn't love the comment from Ron about how he and Jack Del Rio have learned how to be flexible and EB hasn't because of their head coaching experience. I think that was kind of BS. EB's consistency is probably a strength. It's certainly not for everyone, but good luck finding someone whose personality is for everyone. We're talking about a 150-person football staff. Players, coaches, strength trainers, athletic trainers, physios, like 150 people in that part of the building. Like, not everyone's going to get along perfectly. And obviously Eric's job is fairly large and directly over a large number of them. And within that group is some people that might not really take to his coaching style. And them's the breaks. That's math. But Ron insinuating that he and Jack have some personality management advantage over Eric seems very, very dumb, frankly, and wrong and completely unnecessary to say publicly, in my opinion. But that's not what most people freaked out about. If Ron had singled out a player or named names in that anecdote, different story. That to me, no fly zone. That is unprofessional. That's a bad job. That's laying people out to dry. But assuming the issues were consistently worked out and the things were presented as being on the same page, even if it took some conversation to get there, like, what are we talking about here? People need to stop being so damn dramatic. A 150-person unit of players, coaches, staff don't all get along 100% perfectly all of the time, and the new boss, who is very different than the old boss, had some bumps in the integration process that got worked out with the help from the leader in charge. Like, tell me what the problem is there. Really, go ahead. 301-230-0980. I do not think this is a big deal. I do not get the hoopla. And I frankly find the national media folks who are parachuting in on this very, very annoying. As well as the fans who are freaking out. But, you know what? I'm like Eric Bieneimy. I got an open door policy. My door just happens to be a phone. It's called the Ace Law Listener Line, and it is open next. 301-230-0980. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app.
After years on the skin.
It's the Hoffman Show, Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Time to hit the phones. 301-230-0980 is the phone number, and that is the Ace Law listener line. In a wreck, Ace Law helps you get a check. Call 8888-ACE-LAW. That's 8888-ACE-LAW. As we talk about Ron Rivera speaking on Eric Bieneimy and his intensity, a lot of the tweets that I saw before we hit the phones real quick were about like how this was an unforced error. Why bring it up? Because he was asked about it. Because it was a relevant thing to ask about. Because it's been something that's been mumbled about amongst players, and reporters are good at their jobs. Like Nikki Javala was the one who asked the question. Nikki's really good at her job. And I didn't talk to Nikki about why she asked it, but like, for all I know, some agent was like, yeah, my player's kind of ticked off at EB for this, or a player mentioned something offhand, or she observed, because we've certainly, observed plenty of intense interactions, but also like caring interactions. There's a lot of everything with Eric Bieneimy. Like that's kind of the point here. But it was relevant, and Bieneimy, by the way, was talking after practice. You'll hear more from Bieneimy as we go through the show here. So that's why Ron said it. He was answering a question. And if he was like, next question, everyone would be like, oh, what's up with that? Is that a sore subject? Like, truth is good. I like when people tell the truth. And if the truth is unflattering, then fix the truth. Make the truth better. 301-230-0980. Let's go to that Ace Law listener line. Charles, get us started. Charles, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, thanks for taking my call, man.
You got it.
I just want to say, man, these little babies need to stop whining. That man done won Super Bowls. You have won nothing. You've been the laughing stock of the league for like forever. At least I go back to the glory days. I've seen every Super Bowl. But even when Joe Gibbs didn't do all no yelling, but he had the coaches who did it. Everybody know Richie Pettibone just yelled and cursed at everybody. But those were real men back there. These wannabe men are not doing anything.
Charles, just shut up, man. I don't do disrespect like that on this show. These wannabe men. What are you talking about? How ignorant, how frankly insecure. I've been around since all three Super Bowls. Doing what? Watching? Will these men put their bodies on the line every single day? It's okay to go to another man. It's okay to go to your boss and say, hey, I didn't really appreciate the way you said that. Can we be a bit more constructive with your feedback, please? Or, hey, I don't really get what you said. What are you yelling at me for? I want to understand. And this is something that Ron talked about in his answer. He said when they went and talked to Eric, ultimately, like there was a lot of understanding that was created. It was extremely enlightening was the word that Ron used. That's constructive. You don't get to be constructive without being vulnerable. And if you think vulnerability is a sign of weakness, may I recommend to you the same thing that Terry McLaurin did. It's called therapy. That's real. I have no problem saying that. Real men. What does that even mean? Let's go to Cliff. Cliff, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, what's going on, Craig?
What's up?
I see no problem in Eric Bieneimy drilling them players like he is. All he's trying to do, he's not trying to hurt nobody's feelings. He's just trying to bring the best out of the players. Anytime the offense ranked 24th last year, it's time somebody needs to get in them players' faces, and I'll sit back and listen.
No, Cliff, I appreciate the call. And to be clear, this isn't me being anti-Bieneimy yelling at them. I had no problem with that either. And there is something to not having seen the level of what it takes to win. And when you're exposed to that, you got a choice to make as an athlete or as a professional in any profession. You can either be like, okay, that's the work it takes, and do it. That doesn't make it easier, but you do it. Or you can quit. And sometimes you need to be like, you're going to go through some pain to get there. Mental, physical, emotional. And you might go to someone you trust, and like a Ron Rivera, and be like, hey, man, this hurts. And he's going to be like, yeah, well, go talk to Eric, and you'll understand why. You go to Eric, you have the conversation, you move forward. Like, it's not like this team is fractured. It's not like this team is, it's not like players are complaining to Rivera being like, hey, Bieneimy sucks, fire him. It's like, yo, this guy's on me. And I'm not. And if he's just on them and they don't actually take away the lesson, then all Eric's doing is wasting his voice. So Ron's ability to facilitate and Eric's ability to, once you get off the practice field, go in a meeting, go in their office, have a conversation, reach an understanding, move forward together, is coaching. That's good. Yelling is not coaching. Yelling can be a part of coaching. High standards are a part of coaching. But yelling just for the sake of yelling and then saying, hey, if you don't get it, then you suck, that's not getting them anywhere. So this is not me pushing back on Bieneimy. This is me saying, Ron exposing the truth that some players have had a hard time adapting to Bienemy's style, but when they've had conversations with him and created a deeper understanding that there's been enlightenment, I'm telling you that's a good thing. That everyone here is doing their job. Ron's the smoother over guy. Eric's the push guy. The players are willing to be pushed. That's all I'm saying. But some people are like, these soft players. You ain't soft till you play in the NFL. Period. End of story. Signing up for a car collision every weekend. Say that, you're going to get hung up on. Apparently, we got some folks who have better ideas because they know that and they're still on hold. So if you're on hold, stay there. We'll get right to you. Back in 3 minutes with more of your calls. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube too, youtube.com/@theteam980. Stream is starting to, the ramp up is real. Folks have heard there's some spicy conversation happening and starting to tune in on YouTube at youtube.com/@theteam980. Again, a reminder, really great way to consume the show is to fire it up on your smart TV. Just go to the Team 980's page when we're streaming live. If you're subscribed, it'll be one of the first couple of videos that's recommended to you when you open the YouTube app in your smart TV. Then just pop us on like we're afternoon whatever show. like Around the Horn or something on ESPN. Of course, Clinton Yates from Around the Horn joins us every Friday on this show. He's just a man talking about sports in a different box than he's normally talking about in the box on your television. All right, back to the phones, 301-230-0980. Again, the Ace Law listener line. Call 8888-ACE-LAW, because in a wreck, Ace Law helps you get a check. Let's go to Greg in D.C. Greg, thanks for holding it through the break. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Hoffman, how you doing? First time calling your show.
Appreciate it.
Long time Commanders fan. I don't like to call that name, but I watched some of the old school games, like from Jay Strader, Gus Farrat, and you know, everybody say they missed the fan thing, and I mean, it was like the first quarter. I could just listen to the background of the fans, the whistle and everything. I was like, I never heard that. I was born during that era and watched all the good football, but now it's like I'm tired of all this like training camp and you come in and wherever it is, he's doing a great job. If they like it or not, then I mean they're not the players for his whatever he's trying to do for the season. If they believed in the same thing that was going on over the years, then they're not going to get anywhere.
Greg, the thing is, like, most of these guys haven't been here that long. Like, you can't talk about the players that are here now as if they were the guys that were screwing up in 2013 and 2014 at the end of the Shanahan and the start of the Gruden era. Like, there's literally 0 players that are still here from then. It was 10 years ago. The closest guy I think is Tress, and I don't think he got here till maybe 2015. I'd have to check. Maybe Tress was there for one of those years. But, like, there's no crossover on anybody else on the roster. So, yes, there's emblematic problems because of the old ownership and all those things, and there were players that were, didn't have the right character and all that stuff. And, yeah, some of this is going to be there are players on this roster that Eric Bieneimy ultimately says if he's the guy long-term, whether is the OC or the future head coach, that he's like, that guy doesn't have what it takes to play for me. And that's fine. Like, finding that out is part of the process. But that also doesn't mean that it's like no one is being critical. And I don't think Ron was being critical of EB. It's just an acknowledgement that, like, yeah, there's some friction. Have you ever gotten a new boss in your job? You probably had some friction, but hopefully you work things out and maybe the new boss is better and got more out of you than the old boss. Like, that's life. This is ultimately a profession, and while it is very, very rare that I will compare the NFL or pro sports to a regular job, there are, of course, elements that cross over because they're human beings. And that's all really was acknowledged today, was an incredibly human thing happened. They took care of it in the right way, and I don't think that's a big deal, and I don't think it's a referendum on anybody in particular unless there's a player that, say, like rejects the coaching, in which case he's not going to be around very long. And that'll take care of itself. Let's go to Bob in D.C. Bob, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I was just listening to Chiefs players before, like Tyreek Hill and Jamal Charles, and they all seem to point to a guy who you either love or hate. And I imagine you love him if you're winning, but if you're losing, you're going to hate that guy. But, I mean, I think he's a good coach. Like you said, I agree with everything you pretty much said. Everything worked out supposed to.
Bob, thanks for the call. I do think that that's something that should be talked about, so I'll mention it here because it is a thought I had as I was listening to this press conference today, was the one way this goes super sideways is if they lose a lot. Because if you ride guys and you demand an attention to detail that they've never seen before and a standard they've never seen before, and then it doesn't work, that's ugly. That's when it gets ugly. But the thing is, like, the attention to detail, the high standard, that's what's going to help you win. So I think ultimately it will work itself out, and that the reason a guy like Bieneimy's been successful is not just because he's been with other guys like Andy Reid who are very smart, not just because he's had Patrick Mahomes, because he was successful with Alex Smith. But it's because he was a part of an Andy Reid system that had a very high standard and helped players reach it, which helps you win games. Yeah, if you have that kind of mentality from a coach and it doesn't go well for you, either team-wise or individually, let's say, I don't even want to name a player because I don't want to start any speculation. Player X does not have a particularly good year, even though the Commanders are winning, right? That player is a free agent. He's probably going to want out of here. He's probably going to be like, yeah, that sucked because that dude was on me all the time and it didn't actually turn into me getting the production that I was promised. That's not going to go well. There's also so many footballs to go around. Like, it's all multifactorial. But Tyreek Hill was very quick to come to EB's defense today and say, like, yeah, all you got to do is just listen to the man. Sometimes it's tough to hear, but what's a real friend? One who enables you? Like, take it to this level. What's a real friend? Someone who enables you and lets you get away with your crap, or one that calls you on it and is like, hey, you got to do better. Now, if that person's obtuse and just in your face about it all the time, like, it's not really a good way to communicate. But that's still better than not calling you on it in the first place. And if he can call you on it in the moment, and then you guys sit down on the couch later, have a beer, and talk it out and be like, yeah, this is a problem because, and I don't want to see you fail. And, you show that there's real love and care there, which is something that Bieneimy is very good at. Then it ultimately works out for the best in the end. That helps the winning and such. All right, let's keep going with the calls. 301-230-0980 on the Ace Law listener line. Let's go to Jimmy. Jimmy, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing well.
Good. I was wondering about when Ron played for the Chicago Bears, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that wasn't easy during that time. And he should realize that, toughness can bring it in, bring it out. But maybe he's trying to be too – remember those, good old days and trying to be –
Jimmy, I'm
nice
confused what your point is here.
No, what I'm saying is when he played for Chicago Bears.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm not sure who his coach was. I'm sure they were hard-hitting.
It was a guy named Mike Ditka.
Oh, that's right. That's right, Mike Ditka. So I'm sure those are hard-hitting days. I'm sure Mike yelled at him once or twice.
Yeah, but Ron's not telling anybody that Bieneimy yelling is bad.
Well, no. I understand that, but not yelling. As long as everybody is like communicating, like, okay, all right, okay, all right.
Okay, all right. Keeping going. Let's go to Ken in Upper Marlboro. Ken, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Mr. Hoffman, thanks for putting this whole thing in perspective. I've been listening to all the minutia that's been calling up here, making these comments. I'm telling you, from what I've heard from Eric Bienemy's press conference and all the things he's said and all the things I've heard from prior players he's coached in Kansas City, if he's not on you, and if he's not getting on you, and getting on you is not going to make you a better player. And I think he, from his heart, that's what he's trying to do. And some of these players may not be used to it, but I don't even think these players took it that way. I think a lot of it's being taken out of context. I think Ron Rivera handled it the best way it should have been handled. I don't. If someone's telling me something that's going to make me a better person or make me better at my job, I'm going to do it that way. I'm going to accept it. I'm going to revel in it. I'm going to thrive in it. It's as simple as that. I don't understand where all this is going, where it's going. I'm quite sure the media is going to pick up on it and run with it and take it all out of context. So,
Ken, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. It makes me feel, frankly, far more sane. Because this is the thing. People are trying to make stuff out of these comments. And it's not just the media. There are some of the media that are doing it, but I can't stand the media when most of the stuff that's said by the media is actually things tweeted by fans who aren't credentialed. And this is not me saying, like, we're better than you. This is just like putting a line in the sand. Like, hey, the red T-shirts, the blue T-shirts, and remember saying one is better than the other. But the blurring of actual media whose job it is to go report or to opine like it is mine versus fans, and that blurring of the line and how things get blamed on the media when it's actually not the media, I think is very silly. So I refuse to do the media thing. But there are people with loud voices, big platforms on social media, or some in traditional media, who are taking Ron's comments and twisting them into either a criticism of the players for being soft, when speaking up for yourself is actually harder than just taking it. It is a path of more resistance, not least resistance. And that having a conversation with someone who is superior, someone who is over you, someone who's, by the way, your career is in their hands, that's a good thing. That is an adult thing. That is a professional thing. It's not soft, smart. Or people are twisting it as some shot at Bieneimy that he's too much of a hard ass and he's inflexible. And I would say inflexible might be a word that is accurate to describe Bieneimy, but it's not one that I think is totally accurate because of the connotation it carries, that is a negative thing. There is a level of rigidity that it takes to win in pro sports. The standard is the standard. It's a phrase that Sean McVay used. I don't think it's a McVay original, but it's one that I love. If Terry McLaurin is running by you, you have to run with him. The standard is run with Terry McLaurin. Sitting there being sad that you're not fast enough or you didn't, read the route well enough to get on top of it to make up for your speed deficiency isn't an option. You give up the touchdown, you lose. The standard is the standard. Sports lays it out with a scoreboard and everything, as bare can be. Like even in our business, in my business, right? We have ratings and such. Like we have metrics. In your business, you might have some sales metric or some other KPI, key performance indicator, that is indicative of your success. And some of them might be basically a scoreboard. You have points, you have sales, you have this, you have that, and it's very objective. Mine is subjective. Y'all listen or don't based off whether you like me or not, or what I have to say or not, or our guests or not. It's subjective, right? Different people like different stuff. But at the end of the day, in sports, it is objective. The standard is the standard. And there is a rigidity in enforcing that, while also being human to actually maximize the people that you were trying to get it out of. That is the je ne sais quoi, if you will, of coaching. It is the magic. And Bieneimy understands that, I think, very well. He approaches it different than other coaches that have been here in the past. But I think more than the approach is the standard is higher, which is why this team has not been very good and why it is, I think, growing all around and benefiting not just offensively but defensively from his presence. That is ultimately a good thing. It's going to be a process. It's not an instant mix. It's going to take a little bit of stirring. But I think that is what's happening, and that is ultimately a good thing. We'll wrap up with a few more calls next. 301-230-0980. Still to come on the show today, Santana Moss. We'll get his take. He only played 14 years in the NFL. We'll talk to Tana coming up at 5 o'clock. A little bit of take command progress report from Logan Paulson amidst the dog days of camp. Also, you probably have heard by now the story of Kevin Brown, the Orioles announcer who's been suspended. Kevin happens to be one of my very, very good friends, and I have some thoughts. So we'll get to that coming up later in the show as well. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live on YouTube at the youtube.com/@theteam980 and streaming live for free on the Odyssey app. Santana Moss coming up at the top of the hour. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/@theteam980. Before we go any further, and we'll get to some of the calls that are on hold right now in just a second on that Ace Law listener line. Let's hear from Bieneimy directly. He was asked, obviously, he gave a impassioned opening statement, which was great. Talked about the growth that they've made in camp, and then was asked immediately by John Keim from ESPN about Rivera's comments, about his intensity as a coach. Here is Bieneimy earlier today.
Well, first of all, one thing I'm an open book, and I always invite players in. But also, too, as I've gone through this process, yes, I am intense. And I would be afraid, too, to start if I didn't know him. But on top of that, one thing they do appreciate is this. I'm always going to be upfront and I'm always going to be honest. Just like I stated when I first got here, we all got to get uncomfortable to get comfortable, okay? There's some new demands and expectations that I expect. I expect us to be the team that we're supposed to be. It's not going to be easy, and everybody ain't going to like the process. But when it's all said and done with, my job is to make sure that we're doing it the right way. There's a way to do it. Now, do they understand that? Yes, because they're seeing the results. Will everybody buy in? I believe so. But if not, it's okay. Because you know what? My number one job is to help take these guys to another level. And I can see it. Because when you think about where we started in the spring to where we are right now, we're making a lot of strides. I'm proud of these guys. It's been some, excuse my language, some good to watch.
Amen. Amen. They have gotten better. They have grown. The practices are very, very different than anything we've seen in the past. Like, yeah, it took some adjustment. Probably took a reality check for a couple guys. That's fine. That's fine. Either they'll survive or they won't. The standard is the standard. But that doesn't mean that they have to just sit there and if they think that a conversation with Bieneimy will help them get to that standard, or a conversation with Rivera would help them get to that standard. Hey, man, hey, Ron, I don't really like how EB's coaching it, or I don't really get why he's on me all the time. Like, I just want to get better. That's good. That's constructive. I don't get the problem here, or the attack on players, whether it's from fans or media or like former players. Like, I don't know, apparently Booger McFarland went off on NFL Live today. Like, okay. Like, you're actually, I don't know. It just, to me, it's projection. It's weird, unbecoming to call these players soft. Like, they can't take coaching. They can. Just the coaching, the way they might need to be coached is a little different. Or there's something missing that once you connect that dot, everything's good. And you actually unlock a player in a way. Like, what if I told you, and I have no idea, this seems like a good hypothetical to mess with some people's heads who still are like, but soft. What if I told you that Bieneimy Brown hated Eric Bieneimy for the first week? And he went to Rivera and was like, yo, Ron, like, this guy's going to kill me, or whatever he said. And now Rivera and Brown Rivera and Brown and Bieneimy, or some combination of maybe just Brown and Bieneimy, had a conversation. And now Bieneimy Brown, after that conversation, has had the best camp of his career and is poised to actually have a season that makes him worthy of the third-round pick that they spent on him in 2020. Or 2021. What if I told you that? And you're like, oh, soft. Oh, but Brown's awesome now. Like, the point is to get the results. Don't be so concerned with a guy asking for a little help along the way and thinking that he's soft. It's just weird. Weird. Let's go to JB in Waldorf. JB, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Craig, how you doing, man?
I'm good.
All right, man. I look at it like this. Bienemy's not doing nothing wrong at all. I think his style of coaching is what these players need. I just think it's more so a thing of we're hanging on to every little thing that Bieneimy does because he's the new guy around here. He's the low-hanging fruit. And I think we're trying to find ways to discredit what he does and what he's good at. Just like when that quarterback show came out on Netflix, and just because he wasn't involved in clips that was showing Patrick Mahomes and it was Matt Nagy, Like people around here just went crazy. Like he doesn't know what he's doing and things like that. I just think, man, that's an irresponsible way of thinking. And I do think Ron Rivera handled it the right way with talking to the players or whoever it was and telling them to go talk to Eric Bieneimy, fill him out, see the method behind his madness. And I think that's a good thing and not a bad thing, man.
I agree. And the thing is, JB, that's why I don't get why people are mad about Ron for saying it out loud. Like, he was asked a question, he answered and said, hey, we did something good. And now people are mad about it? Like, I don't get it. I appreciate the call. Let's go to Richard real quick. Richard, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
You got it.
I too agree with my fellow caller who just called. This is football. This is football. This is not follies. And I just want to say this. In order to get change, you've got to work harder to make it to the next level. And I hope some of the players are listening to your show because they just need to know that if they want to really be great, they have to work harder. Eric Bieneimy has already been to the Super Bowl. He knows what it takes to get there. These young men have never been there. Most of them, they've never been there. And so why would you complain if someone is working to help you to get to where you want to get to?
Well, because
so
hold on, Richard, because here's the thing. I'll let you finish in a second, but this is like a good encapsulation because we agree, but we disagree a little bit, right? 100% on the standard part, right? But if Eric Bieneimy is actually not helping them reach the standard because he's talking to a player or communicating with them in a way that is ineffective, right? And whether it's the yelling or what he's actually saying, practice happens quickly, right? So EB might have snapped at someone real quick and said something, and he didn't even mean any harm by it. He never means any harm by it. But they don't actually intake what he's trying to tell them. They feel a certain type of way about it because they feel like they just got yelled at and they don't even understand why. And then they go to Rivera and they're like, I'm trying to understand. I don't get what this dude's saying. And then Rivera's like, hey, go talk to Eric about it. They talk it out. Now they're on the same page. Now they actually get to that standard, which is why to me, nobody is wrong here. Eric is good to coach hard. He's good to push. I don't really even care if he yells as long as he's not yelling obscenities and insulting them as human beings, which he's not.
Me too.
And then as long as that's the case and the players are trying to actually seek understanding, that communication to me is a good thing. There is a way to do it wrong, to just berate players, but that's not what Eric's doing. And so to me then to call the players soft, yeah, if you don't want to do the work, I don't even know if that's soft. That's just you don't have it. You don't have what it takes to win at this level, and that is an unfortunate truth. You're still better than 99% of the football players on planet Earth. But the 1%ers who plays in the NFL, and you got to be the 1% of the 1%. So does that make sense in terms of squaring the circle of where I think people are taking it too far, and while also saying that Bienemy's doing nothing wrong?
I think so. But the whole thing I want to say, and I know we got to go because we're running out of time.
Yep.
But the whole thing here is that our team has got to get to the next level, and it takes work to do that. I agree. Eric Bieneimy should not berate anyone. He should not do that. That's not effective, and it won't work.
Right.
But to get the hard work, to get the reps in, and to play hard in practice gives a better product on that field. And that's what everyone wants. And that's what we need.
For sure. And, Richard, I appreciate the call, and you are correct. We are quickly running out of time because Santana Moss is set to join us in just a moment. But I don't think what Rivera said was exposing players that weren't doing the work. What will expose players not doing the work is if someone gets cut by surprise at the end of training camp because they never adapted. And if it's whoa, didn't see that one coming. Clearly, Bieneimy was no, that dude can't play for me. But I don't anticipate that happening. And if there's some bumps along the way and getting everyone on the same page, that's not a sign of dysfunction. It's a sign of function as long as everyone actually lands on the same page. And even by what Rivera and Bieneimy said today, it does seem like a lot of these things are trending towards being on the same page. Now, we'll see when the live bullets start flying, if you will, on Friday. And obviously during the real live bullets in the regular season. But I actually have a a good trust and a good faith in the character of the guys on this team and on the coaching staff that is here right now, that while they might have other problems when it comes to execution, this won't be the thing that brings them down this season. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Might get back to this a little later, so you can certainly send tweets, send threads, send whatever, carrier pigeons to get your takes off. Leave them in the chat on YouTube at the Team 980. We get back, though. Santana Moss on the Hoffman Show.
Can Eric Bieneimy unlock the offense?
I got to make sure that I'm putting these guys in the best situation to be the most explosive, the most dynamic, and also
to warn you, bro. It is a mess in downtown Nashville every day of the week and twice on Sunday. Not even
we moved hotels the next night. I still am waiting on my refund for that. But yeah, we moved hotels the second night.
Wow.
It was fun. You say they rely on them. We went to brunch with my buddy the next day, who is a Nashville native and has lived in Nashville long enough that he remembers when it was more than just the bachelorette capital of the world. And he's like, yeah, we're pretty much on the woo girl economy.
Yeah, that's precisely what's going on. The downtown businesses cater to that. If you try to get it shut down, you're probably the one getting thrown out. It is what it is right now. It's weird, but Nashville, baby. What are you gonna do?
Yeah. So I will add one more small part to this story, and this is the part, frankly, that I've been waiting to tell you all week as well. That was kind of part one. We got quality Yates reaction. Part two, as we leave the hotel the next morning to go to breakfast. Remember, the wall's very thin. So it's not going where you think it's going. But as we walk down the hallway, my dear sweet wife just starts saying in a slightly elevated volume of voice, you know, it's been proven that the later groups stay out and make noise and all this stuff at their bachelorette weekend, the higher the divorce rate in the wedding,
So
and also the better chances,
basically.
and also the better chances.
Wow. Okay. Okie dokie. So Rachel was pissed, basically.
Yeah, she doesn't have a lot of tolerance for the woo girls. They say on the internet, like, feel free to post stuff, like your friends' photos, do whatever. But like whatever you do for your own well-being, don't read the comments. Comment section, bad idea. What do we do?
We read those comments, baby.
That is exactly what we do. That was a little bit better. I still feel like that one was a little muted. I think sometimes it feels like you build yourself up a little too much, and then sometimes you don't quite go for it.
Because I ain't want to go screaming all the way. The thing is, though, my mic is a little lower than yours, so maybe I could have actually, did what I really.
Mike also moves. You can go, ooh. Did you know you could play tricks with a microphone?
I think I'll try that next time.
Okay. You want to give it another shot?
We read those comments, baby.
There we go. All right. I feel ready now. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. 5 o'clock each and every day means Not My Beat. Get there in 1 second. Of course, 6 o'clock, our training camp pick six at 6, where we will go through the 6 biggest things at training camp today. We'll have more on the Rivera Bieneimy stuff. We'll have more from Bieneimy in general. Also, today was a pretty, I would say, important practice. As important as they get, it's training camp, where it was the last padded practice before the first preseason game. So get to all of that at 6 o'clock. Take command in half an hour. But right now, it is time for Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in. Not My Beat.
Our guest today played 14 years in the NFL. I used to have a lot more of his stats memorized because we did a show together every week. Now I just can tell you we played 14 years in the NFL. Caught a lot of footballs for a lot of yards, a lot of touchdowns, many of them against the Dallas Cowboys. Now, of course, the analyst with Command Center, my guy Santana Moss. Tana, what's up, bro?
Great, what's good?
Good to have you on the show again, man. So I'm sure that you've been at least made aware, if you weren't watching it live this morning, the kind of story of the day where, you know, Ron Rivera is asked about Eric Bienemy's intensity, and he admits that some players have had a problem with it. They've gone to him. He just says, hey, go to EB. They talk it out. It seems like everything is fine. We just spent an hour talking about it. I don't want to lead you with my opinion any one way or another. But as a guy who did play 14 years in the league, what did you make of the comments and kind of everything that goes into them?
I really want to hear your opinion on it or your take on it. But as a player, I do believe it's one of the biggest reasons why a lot of guys who played the game don't personally want to coach on this level, because they know what it takes. And sometimes the way we learn and how we was taught by the men we was taught by, they kind of got up our a-holes. You know what I'm saying? I would try to think of a better word, but that's the best word I can think of right now.
They got in your face.
Bingo. They got in our face, got in your behind, whatever you want to call it, and chewed you out at times to make sure you got the job done. Now, when you become a professional on this level, you don't have to worry about those guys speaking to you in that tone or getting after you in that way. But a lot of guys on this level are not professionals. They play the game because they're very, gifted at the game. They don't some of them don't care about, what they do off the field or how they do things on the field. They can just play the game. And you need a coach or two sometimes to let those guys or remind those guys that this is how we got to do it. This is how we have to be, every day. We have to all hold each other accountable. Hey, I love it. You know what I mean? I was laughing when I heard it, because I'm like, I don't know about to let that out the house a little bit, telling the media, because I know it's going to be a frenzy when you get hold of something like that, just knowing the history of EB. But, man, if we trying to win or we trying to sit around here and be at a country club, you tell me. That's what I look at it as. You want country club, we can go get the coach who was here. You want to win, let's get chewed out a couple of times and see where it takes us.
So I think the way we approached it is differently, but ultimately, we very much agree. I didn't think it was a big deal at all, because, and I actually don't get why people made such a big deal of Ron saying it, because it is Ron's job. If EB rubs someone the wrong way, and, you've been out there at these practices. These practices are so quick tempo-wise. It's something else I want to talk to you about in a few minutes. But, if EB snaps off a piece of feedback to someone and gets on him real quick and then has to go coach the next play, and that guy's just like, what just happened? And he goes to Rivera saying, hey, go talk to Eric, and them talking it out, that's what coaching is. That's not a problem. Yeah. And the fact that some people, are there guys that fit the mold of what you're talking about throughout the league? Absolutely. There are guys that are very gifted, so they play in the NFL, and what I would give to be that gifted athletically. It's something I will never experience. You had it, plus the work ethic, which is why you were you. But to me, a player wanting to talk to a coach and engage with them is actually a positive sign. I don't see that as a negative. And I'm curious, in your perspective and in your career, you had so many different coaches, position coaches, coordinators, head coaches. Who are some of the coaches that you maybe did have a combative but good relationship with that made you a better player?
I think one of them that jumps off the page is Mike Shanahan. He wasn't easy, but he was easy. He was a guy that, man, he gave you so much. He let you be a man. He let you, have those bet days, but he chewed you out.
and he chewed you out before you even got to the point of doing something stupid or making a mistake. He lets you know day one, I fire guys that been here. I'm firing vets. So if you don't like the way I'm doing things, come step to me in my office and we can shake hands and say, it was nice getting to know you for the short period of time that I've been here. But he set the tone, letting you know, look, man, this is how we're going to do stuff. I'm going to bring guys in here that's going to tell you how I do things, and from there we're going to take off and try to play some good football. And if you know how to play ball, you ain't got to worry about a coach like that. You want that kind of coach. I want a coach that's going to be fired up about this job because I'm fired up about it. That's why I'm here, And like I said before, every man on a team isn't the same. So you need some guys to kind of have that coach or somebody to kind of chaperone them or tell them practice needs to be a little more, I need a little more tempo from you today, or I need you to hustle to the next period, or I need you to be on your best in every drill. You need that sometimes from different, some players need that from coaches sometimes. So, I think about when I went against, how we have these practices during training camp where we go against teams, going against other teams. And
the joint practices, yeah, like they're about to have in Baltimore. Yeah.
Bingo. I remember going against New England late in my career. And I played against New England all throughout my first 4 years in the league when I was in the AFC East. And then I got over here. I didn't play them as much, but I knew what they was about. When you watched our practice and watched New England on the other field practice, you saw the difference. You saw why they're championship caliber and we were who we were. Those guys, every time you heard the whistle blow, those guys were sprinting to the next drill. They was doing something in full speed. We was over here walking to the next drill, having water, and don't get me wrong, we still went out there and played competitive football and had fun and won some games. But the reason why those guys is consistent at winning is because the way they was coached and the way they practiced. So I believe that EB is bringing that fire and letting these guys know I'm going to be intense because this is the way we win games. This is what I was taught. This is how I've been coaching, and this is how we became champions. And we were able to be talked about as one of those teams year after year. If you don't like it, then, hey, like I said, we'll have that handshake and you can go about your business. But if you're trying to win, this is what I'm bringing.
Santana Moss with us here on the Hoffman Show. I don't know, Tana, if you saw EB's full presser today, but he had a really amazing quote in it to the exact point that you just said. And he said, I tell these guys there's an imaginary sign out front that says good applicants welcome, as if to say, hey, if someone wants to come take your job, they can come take it. So you better prove it every single day. And that's the league. You talk about the New England stuff and how they practiced and kind of the edge that they had, the intensity that they kept. And we've seen it now with Bieneimy. I think sometimes that stuff can be a little bit for show, and you can go out and still get your ass kicked on Sundays. But what is it about the cumulative nature of doing everything with a certain intensity that you do think leads to like this? And I don't think just to be clear, I don't think the way Belichick does it is for show. I don't think the way that Bieneimy does it is for show. There's a reason why they do these things this way. My question to you is, what is that why? What is it about doing things this way that leads to champions?
I don't have the right answer. It's never one answer for this type of stuff, And I just believe that when you practice great habits, it shows up in the critical moments of the game. It shows up in a time where we're tired. This other team has been beating us, and we need to find a way to gut it out, to come back and take the lead. And when you do the things that these guys have instructed these guys to do through situations by, dog days like camp and all the other times when they got up in these guys' face and told them how I need you to be and how intense I'm going to be at you, it shows up in those moments because you don't want to fail. You know what I'm saying? Like I've been on teams where it's okay to not make the play. But me as a man, I'm trying to make every play because guess what? When it comes my way, it's going to be my name on there that said that he either caught the ball or didn't. It's going to be my family name that get dragged if, we're in a social media era now that's going to get dragged every day on social media. Thank Lord I didn't have to play in that era that long. I was on my way out when that social media game came around. Yeah. But I thought of that stuff all the time. Like, I tell folks to this day, folks ask me, Tanner, hey, I had this interview the other day. Somebody was like, what was your most defining moment as a University of Miami Hurricane? So I asked the guy, I say, as a punt returner or as a receiver? He's like, both. Give me one. I said, as a punt returner, I can say the most defining moment was just my last year when I ran the last punt back and broke the record my last game in the OB. It was senior night. Boom, boom, boom. I said, you should have saw the things that I did all year long that fast on that same kind of play, wall left. And then it shows up my last punt return I take as a senior in the OB. Then I told him as a receiver, I say, the most defining moment to me was when I dropped that ball my sophomore year against Florida State, the first deep ball that we threw, the first, drive of the game. I said, that play right there really made me, because I've been in situations where coaches tell you this play is going to either make you or break you. And when I say it could have easily broke me, because everybody got on me about that. And I still finished the game with 90 yards and a TD, but I could have easily curled up into my shell and say, I don't want to play no more, coach. This is the biggest game of the year. This is the first drive of our game. And if I catch this ball, we probably beat Florida State. I don't know. It was the first drive, so who knows how the game would have transpired. It would have probably broke their back like, damn, this guy, they just stopped us, and then the offense do this. But what I did, I took that, and I knew how low I felt. I knew all the stuff that I heard, in the streets from people who were just fans. Now, they didn't remember nothing I did the rest of that year, because I balled out the whole year. But always, all I heard was the drop ball that I had against Florida State. So I took that and I let that build my fire. I let that be my fire, and I made sure I never felt like that again. So that's what I'm talking about. In moments like that, man, you understand what this game can do for you. And I think when you have coaches like the coach that EB is and the coaches that I've kind of been brought up under, all of them wasn't the same. When you have those coaches there to kind of make you understand that perspective, then you go out there and play with a different mindset. And like I said before, it doesn't always lead to you having Hall of Fame careers or Pro Bowl careers or, you name it. Still, you're able to understand what it means to have a coach teach you the proper way of doing things. Because, like I said before, I've had those coaches where when you lose, it wasn't a big thing. Hey, we're going to try again next week. But I want a coach to be up my you-know-what, because I know it means something to me if he's doing that.
Santana Moss with us on the Hoffman Show. So I actually love that analogy of the fire, right? Because fire, if it's not hot enough, it doesn't do anything. If it's too hot, it burns you. And so I'm curious if you think of your own experience, and this is where, like, I have a great appreciation for what I see of Bieneimy and for some of the things he talked about today, where he's like, I will be on guys, but I will also be their biggest supporters. Like, there's a balance there. When you think back to that sophomore year that you had at the U and maybe other moments in your career, how did coaches make sure that your internal fire stayed at the right temperature, if you will?
Well, I had a receiver coach, Curtis Johnson. To me, I give him all the credit that I can give a guy when it comes to my game. Why I was able to play on the NFL level at a high level at 5'9.5", 5'10". The guy taught me how to be a professional wide receiver in college. He told me when I first got there, he said, bro, you have a go route and a post corner. Them the two routes you got. He said, by the time you leave here, you're going to be able to run every route in this tree, and you're going to be damn good at it. And I know I had other routes, but he was just telling me what I did exceptionally well. And that's basically running past people. So, I took a lot of stuff that he taught me, and I remember that moment, man, when I dropped that ball, and he had me in that room, and he said, look, man, he said, Tanner, you ain't going – he said, you want to hear them call your name for you dropping it or for you making the catch and making a play out of it. He said, you got to make the play first. He said, you were so wide open to where you was leaning. You were just so antsy to get the ball when you could have just slow the game down and let it come to you. And I swear that was the best advice he could have gave me, because from that moment on, I always told myself in the game, before every game, let the game come to me. Let the game come to me. If it's a catch, let me catch it first. If I just so happen to get jiggy out there, I just so happen to get jiggy out there. But don't try to do much. Try to catch the ball first. Get that first catch under your belt so now you can have things slow down for you. And I swear I needed that. But also, not only him telling me that, it's things he did every week. He made me carry a ball around school. Told guys, did you see Santana with this ball? I know he's not fumbling, but make sure you make sure that he has his ball and he's doing these ball drills. He told me these ball drills with like, he gave me single hand ball drills, like, because I always had small hands. And he said, Tanner, I want you to just, hold the ball at the tip of the ball and drop it and re-catch it. Do that throughout school while you're walking around. And he had the guys mess with me when I had the ball. And I think all that stuff just built confidence up in me, strengthened my hands, a lot of stuff like that. But at the same time, he could have easily just chewed me out and say, man, you awful, blah, 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 and you're not going to play no more. But he understood the magnitude of that moment, and he also understood that let's see what you're made of now. You know what I mean? Let's see if you take that and let it build you, or let it, like you say, burn you, and then now you're no longer able to play on this level.
That's coaching. You got to keep the fire at the right temperature. That's good stuff. That's a really cool story. Santana Moss with us here on the Hoffman Show. All right, back to this team and a couple of things more specific to it. What do you make of the offense's ability to get better by playing against this defense every day? It is so challenging, and there have been a couple of days, it seems like, in practice where the defense is just too good and the offense can't even operate. They can't function, and that's not getting that much done. But they bounce back and have shown some resilience. So what have you made kind of that battle between what we think is a pretty elite defense and an offense that is a work in progress?
The key words you said, they bounce back. That's growth right there. They bounce back. I mean, it's not going to be peaches and cream. And I, quite frankly, I believe that the defense should beat up on us every day. Honestly, they should beat up on us every day until we have our stuff together. And I think the only way you're going to see the offense get their stuff together is because now everyone's going to learn the scheme together and know how to play in unison together. Like, this is the new offense. The offensive line is restructured. You have a new quarterback. The skill guys are still some of the same guys, but the guys up front in the trenches is what you need the most to do anything offensively. And when you have a new quarterback and a new offensive line all trying to get the things down together, it's going to cause you to have some of them days. And then let's not, act like we don't have a top 5 defense that they're going against every day. I mean, our front 5 alone is probably best in the league. You know what I mean? So could be best in the league. I give us top 2, top 2 front line. But I'm just saying, like, you have no choice but to get better going against those guys, every day. And I think you're going to see a team that shows that growth throughout the season. Every game you're going to be able to say, okay, this is what it's like to get beat up in practice and go out here and beat up on other people. Because I've had those experiences. I know what I was like at UM. We beat up on each other. Our offense was so high-powered. No, seriously.
Oh, I know. I remember going through those rosters with you. Like, we just sit there before the show back when we did the show together in, what was it, 2016. And I just pull up the Wikipedia page. Like, tell me about that guy. Tell me about that guy. You guys, it was like 100 pros at one time on a college team. It was ridiculous.
Bro, we beat up on each other. I remember being a young pup, then I remember being a veteran in college. And I remember young guys like Philip Buchanan coming in and Michael Rump being a young guy. And, like, we would embarrass them in practice. But guess what? Come game time, those guys are leading the Big East in picks because they got a chance to see the best every day, So that's how I look at what we have going on right now. They have no choice but to get better, and I'm okay with them getting beat up. It's not alarming to me. I think last year was alarming because we knew how good our offensive line had done the year before, and we was expecting them to be better last year, and something just wasn't right. And we also knew this offense had been something that they've been running for the last few years. So you should have it all down packed. But the one thing that was probably hampering us last year around this time was having a new quarterback too. You know what I'm saying? So It's just one of them situations. With what we have going now and the things that the guys across from them have going for themselves, it's night and day. And so we should get our behinds beat up. But like you said, they should bounce back because now you get a chance to watch yourself. And then, we're in practice. We watch each other every day. I should be able to now have something better planned for you tomorrow after taking a butt whipping today.
No doubt. That bounce back is so important, and we've seen it from this offense time and time again. I can't repeat exactly what Eric Bieneimy said today, but it's good stuff is the paraphrase from Bieneimy today talking about it. More from Santana if you want it. Command Center on the Commanders YouTube page. Tana, always great to have you, bro. We'll definitely have you back again soon, and I'll see you out at practice next week.
Thanks for having me, buddy. Take care.
You got it. Santana Moss, everybody, with us here on the Hoffman Show. We get back here from Tana's old teammate, Logan Paulson, to Take Command Tuesday here on the Team 980.
A new era of the...
Team 980. We're good over there? What's up? It's the Hoffman Show with a working microphone on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Again, thanks to Santana Moss. Fantastic stuff from the Tana Man with us here on the Team 980. Right now, time for a little Take Command Tuesday. Of course, Take Command, the podcast I host with the one and only Logan Paulson, 10-year NFL vet, who has been through his fair share of dog days in the middle of training camp. For some great dog day of training camp stories, make sure you check out the full edition of the podcast, wherever it is that you get your pods. Just search Take Command. Of course, full episodes on YouTube at 1067 The Fans page as well. But talking about, of course, this team, this particular rendition of the Commanders, some offense, some defense thoughts, kind of an update on where we were as we recorded this on Monday, so yesterday. So no thoughts on the practice today, but plenty of really good stuff from Logan and me. So without further ado, Take Command Tuesday here on The Hoffman Show. Take Command podcast defense a little bit. The one area that's gotten, I think, fairly consistent praise is the run game. Now, It is training camp, but I trust your eye on this more than anything we could possibly see from the sidelines in our one watch from the world's worst angles. But the results seem to be there. But what have you seen in the run game, and do you think it's stuff that, by your experience, can translate into the regular season?
Yeah, I really do. I've been really impressed, and it's kind of changed my philosophy after watching this about what it takes to cultivate a good run game. I used to be a believer you got to have the pads on, you got to have the helmets on, you got to be hitting guys. They didn't do that all offseason, and then they came in. What was that? 2 Fridays ago now? It was about a week ago, and they came out and put the gauntlet down from a run game standpoint, and really did an excellent job. And I think that has just continued. And, everyone talks about 9-on-7, how the defense is looking good in 9-on-7. That's a defensive drill. So in that drill, in those drills, I'm looking for more combinations and how those guys and how they sync. And then, again, the kind of relationships between the offensive linemen and the physical approach and the physical mindset. And when you watch that period specifically, it's pretty impressive. I think it's pretty impressive where they're at from a run game standpoint. And I think they have a whole bunch. We can't really talk too much schematically about what they're doing because of the media agreement with the team. But they're doing kind of multiple different types of runs stylistically. They've obviously got a little RPO in there, which everybody they were going to do. And I actually think those are their least efficient looking runs, but because guys are unblocked. In an RPO, you got to read one guy. But on the runs where everyone's blocked, guys seem to know where the targets are going. They're creating great movements against a very good defensive front. And I think it's something that they're going to be able to hang their hat on. And it's funny, and I mentioned this before, and I'm going to say it again. As they've gotten better at blocking those runs, the pass protection and the physicality and the pass protection is getting better. And I think that when you look at that first offensive line right now, especially, and we should probably talk about this should be its own thing, but with Chris Paul coming to that lineup, that starting five is starting to look like a really nice group. Cosme is occasionally losing to Deron Payne, but in the one-on-one settings, he's doing a great job. He's blocking well. I think he's going to continue to progress. You feel good about him. Wiley's actually, I think, done a really nice job improving on some of the power bull rush stuff that I was worried about early. It's not perfect, but it's definitely getting better. Gates is a big physical son of a gun. Chris Paul might be the strongest dude on the team. When he puts his hands on people, he's in positions that aren't very leveraged, advantaged. He's kind of tall or whatever, and he's able just to kind of lift John Allen out of a spot. And when he's working with Leno, they're able to create some tremendous movement. So I think that starting five, all of a sudden, you add John Bates as kind of that extension of the offensive line, is looking pretty good. It's just, to me, it's super interesting. It's super interesting to see how far they've come in the last, 5 practices or so.
Yeah, I was going to ask, but I feel like I know the answer. Is the position battle over at left guard? Is Chris Paul already the starter? I know that Sadiq, I don't know that Ron's going to say that yet because Sadiq is still coming back from injury and he's still playing some. I think today he was back out there and had a couple reps with the ones, but largely it was Paul. And to see the difference is the evidence is there. I just don't know how based off availability and based off what you actually see when they're out there, how you possibly go back to Sadiq at this point. Because it's also not like Sadiq is sitting on some resume. The only thing Sadiq has over Chris Paul is draft position. Like, they used a third rounder on him, but that was a long time ago at this point. And he's never, like, despite getting the opportunities you get as being a third-round pick, he's never actually been able to stay on the field. And when he's been on the field, he's been very, very inconsistent. So he doesn't have a lot of experience. The draft pick, resource allocation, argument is I would say expired. Yeah. And at that point, like, what reason would there be to not start Chris Paul?
Yeah, after watching him since Sadiq's calf injury, I don't have a lot of reason why I would go with Sadiq. I think Sadiq's maybe a better athlete, but I think when I look at him, Chris, from like a pass protection standpoint, from like a combination standpoint, he's not the most fleet of foot guy. He's not a bad athlete, but Sadiq's an exceptional athlete in terms of movement skills. But I just think Chris Paul is much more consistent, like down to down. Like we talked about early on, how Sadiq was having a really hard time consistently even stalemating with John, right? And it was just kind of like John was just creating a ton of pressure. He was winning every third rep, which is not a great ratio for an offensive lineman. And then I thought, well, that's just John. Like, John would do that to anybody he's practicing against every day. And then Chris comes in, and John is still having great practices, but it's just gotten so much more quiet. And the pressures, the wins are they look more like NFL wins, which are kind of muddy, right? Chris is fighting, John's fighting. There's a little bit of pressure. The quarterback's kind of got to shift away from it, but the ball's out, as opposed to these like lightning quick wins that Sadiq was giving up to John like every day. And so I think that to me, again, like, I don't know if it's a big enough sample size. You could make an argument that, hey, Sadiq got him early in training camp, whatever. But like, it's just been way more consistent, way more professional looking when Chris is in there. And, they have access to all the meetings. They have access to all this stuff in the film room. And maybe Sadiq is doing an excellent job in there. I have no idea. And they feel really comfortable about what he does from a mental standpoint. But at least from practice production, I would say I'm in Chris Paul's camp right now, in terms of a guy that I think makes this group better. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think it's hard to disagree with that. The thing is that people, I think, need to understand, just from a human capital management standpoint, is there's no reason to rush to make decisions until you have to make decisions.
Right.
I realize that makes all of us antsy. And there are times where you cross a threshold that, like, for instance, with a starting quarterback, where there's such a wide impact on the rest of the team, if there's indecision there, it can be good to get certainty, right? But on something like a left guard on 2 guys between 2 rookie contracts, there's no reason to land the plane prematurely. Right. Like, you keep your options open, because what happens if you name Chris Paul your starter, like, definitively, right? Like, you do all the same stuff otherwise. It's just a verbal proclamation, right? But you're giving him all the reps, you're treating him as the starter, but you don't, when you're asked about it, it's like, we're still letting that battle play out. Then you say, all right, he's the starter. He gets hurt, or he has a bad week, and you're like, I don't know. Going back, like, do you lose Sadiq mentally? Like, there's all this like psychology that goes into this stuff that just means you don't. And to me, like, it's just don't make a decision before you have to. Where you could lose a guy, you could set someone back, whatever. Just keep all your options open, let it play out. When it gets to the point you have to make a decision based off of, hey, it's week 1, or hey, it's the week before, and we need to like actually make a decision because there's urgency to that, then you make the decision and you move forward. So I know everyone's in a rush to know everything, but like, there's actually not a deadline here.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, with Chris specifically, because of how raw he was technically last year, like, I would expect him to look really good the more reps he gets against the defense. So if I'm kind of waiting for something for Chris, if there's any kind of question, it would just be, how's he going to look in the first preseason game, and then how's he going to look against Baltimore? Like, does he play with the same consistency against someone that he doesn't see every day and doesn't have a plan for? Because, you mentioned it's pretty even, and I agree it's pretty even, but Sadiq has at least played significant time as an NFL starter for, we're talking significant, like 3 to 5 games, whatever it is.
I don't know if I would go significant. He's played some.
But Chris hasn't. He's played 1 game.
Sure. In
a game that doesn't really mean anything. So, there's the experience factor. And again, I would be willing to make that proclamation now, just having watched them. But again, I'm not in the meeting room. But if there's an argument to wait, it's that you've got two kind of really important data points coming up very quickly. The Cleveland game, for example, and then the Baltimore practices. And I would imagine Chris is going to do great in both those. And so to me, after that, there wouldn't be any reason not to kind of say, hey, Chris, you've earned this opportunity and you're doing a great job.
All right. Defensively, I feel like so much is going well, which is great. Anything, I mean, I would say the biggest question mark right now is Jamin and what they're doing with him. He seems to be all over the place, some with the ones, some with the twos. He's gotten some reps with the threes. Like, I just don't know kind of what's going on there. But let's start with the good stuff. Like, what is going well defensively that they are able to show up so consistently, that they're executing well, despite personnel going in and out. Like, it doesn't seem to matter who's out there. They're just acting as one good cohesive unit.
Yeah, I think let's start with, you mentioned Jamin. Can we talk about Jamin for a second? I think that would be appropriate. So Jamin on Friday, and I think on Sunday too, he's starting to, he has some splash plays, which is something that when he came here I thought would be happening more. And so I think that's really nice to see. And I think you're seeing him look a little bit better in coverage. Again, his run fits, like when he goes, it's like the classic first round draft pick thing. Like when a first round draft pick who was just physically a little bit better than everybody goes, like you could be watching the DB and it would flash in the corner of your eye, like, who the heck was that? And you're like, oh, that's Jamin. And at least for me, when I've been watching the film the past couple of days, like he's done that. So I think that bodes well for him and his development. And again, there's a lot of stuff going on with Jamin, which I'm not going to talk about here, but like, I think from a football standpoint, I like some of the stuff I've seen from him. He's been very physical, 9-on-7. Like he's rocking guards. Like he's a big physical son of a gun who can run really fast. And so to me, I'm like, to see more of those flashes, those kind of big splash plays, to me is something that gets me excited for him and his development. But again, like Khaleke Hudson's doing a great job, especially as a blitzer. I'd like to see him do a little bit more in 9-on-7, but like he's done a great. He's just continued to do well. Cody, again, has been a little bit quiet for my liking. I'd kind of like him to show up a little bit more, but he seems to be very, very consistent and understands how to take on blocks a little bit better than like Cole Holcomb, for example. So I think he'll generally be like a plus in that situation. And then Mayo, like talk about a guy who was born for 9-on-7. Like that dude lives in 9-on-7 and he's excellent at it. So, if this, if this was 10 years ago, he'd be probably starting for this team, but it's not, but I think that's kind of where I'd say that group is at. Then you talked about the back end, like the kind of what makes this group good. First off, the defensive line's outstanding. Like, I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And they seem to be understanding how to rush cohesively a little bit better. Like past couple of days, like I've seen Montez and John working these TE-ET games with each other that are, I don't know how you block them, quite frankly, unless you got Trent Williams out there. And, like they're able to get the offensive line on different levels with their power rushes. I think that's awesome. Oh, a little note about Chase. I saw him rushing from like an interior line spot the other day. Good skill set for him to develop, I think, and it lets him get better rushes on the field. But I think that group's doing well. Chase, I think, is improving as a pass rusher every time I watch him, so that's great. Montez, like at times, is unblockable. Deron, same thing. Big Phil and John are kind of who they are. And then the depth pieces are doing great. Like Casey, was that Friday? Looks like a varsity rusher, man. Big varsity rushes, making very disruptive plays off of stunts and off of edge pressure. James, same thing. So like that group is just, they're playing really well. They deserve a ton of credit. The back end, I think, is where kind of the magic is made, so to speak. I think they're just doing a great job with this man match, zone match, kind of disguising coverages, guys being on the same page. Like, I don't know what led to the change, if it's just not having William Jackson III back there, but everyone just seems to kind of be seeing the route combinations in the same way. So you don't get any of these like wide open busts. Like there was a pretty open throw on Sunday to Jahan. Jahan had a couple, but they were in man-to-man situations, and Jahan is running a route against Holmes, and Holmes basically falls down because the route's so good both times, and Jahan's open by 20 yards. That's the only time you see anything like critically break down. But again, that's a matchup I would expect to favor the offense.
Right.
But in normal situations, it's just like They see it well. They're playing fast. And I think you've mentioned this a couple of times, Craig, is the speed in the back end coupled with physical football players. It's a very valuable combination. You see why people run 40s at the combine, right? Because they can just chew up grass in a way that is, it makes it hard to make throws and it makes it hard to get yards after the catch. So I think that to me is kind of where the magic is made. And if this defense is going to be a top 5 group, if that group can kind of go from like good to excellent, I think that's where that's going to happen.
100%. And like, if you think of the quote from play callers, spatial Darwinism, right? What's one way to cover more space? Be fast. If I can get to that spot faster, or I can cover more ground, like my circle of area that I'm covering is bigger. And that means there's less open space for the offense. And if you multiply that by like 4, 5, 6 DBs, now there's just not a lot of open space. And so I think and by the way, if you mix it with good anticipation, good understanding, like it's incredible. And guys like Forbes, who have this great route recognition, even as a rookie, he hasn't seen anything yet, and he's already got it. Wait till he gets some reps under his belt. Guys like Cam Curl, guys like Kendall Fuller, obviously. BSJ's had a great camp sliding in and outside. There's just a lot of really quality players and the other thing too is they communicate so well. There's been so many times, like, we can hear Visselmeyer pretty well. He's on the back end, the DB's coach, for those that don't know, and kind of from where he stands on typically the hash closest to us and being behind the defense at a depth that typically a lot of us try to stand at to see from the sideline. Like, you can hear him say, like, great communication, great call, good switch, good whatever. And he's constantly complimenting how the guys are playing together. And, there's something to a defensive back unit playing together where even if you are not technically right, you can make each other right. And that's the most important thing. Like, are you right in the end, even if it's not in the way that it was called or you drew it up on the whiteboard? Do you understand how to play off of each other so that if someone makes a mistake and covers the flat instead of, the curl, the other guy goes and compensates for it, and now everything's covered, so it doesn't really matter. Like, these are the types of things playing together that have been huge bugaboos for this team over the past couple of years. You just had straight up busts in big plays, and we know how valuable big plays are, to an offense and against a defense. And not giving those up, I think, will be huge. And I think the other thing, Logan, to kind of tie it all together is how close has Montez been to a 18 sack season the last couple of years if he had that much more time. Or John or Duran or, obviously as Chase works back in, guys like James, guys like Casey. Like, there's so many quarterback hits the past couple of years on this team where if the ball could just be held for another tenth of a second, they're sacks. And I think the better coverage is going to lead to more sacks this year, which puts you behind the chains, which then compounds the problem of a great pass rush with a bunch of ball hawks on the back end. And that is why I think this team has so much upside in terms of defensive potential is they've got the ingredients to make big plays, and some of those big plays are going to generate even bigger plays because the coverage and the rush should marry so well together.
Yeah, and I think another reason you feel really good about it, honestly, is that this idea that they're going against I don't want to say a real offense because that sounds like I'm being negative towards Scott, but it's an offense that's a little bit more comprehensive in terms of how it challenges spaces, how it challenges some of the things you're talking about in terms of passing stuff off, the tempo, the protection rules, the chips, slides, the screens, and so for them to be matching this stuff at a really high level versus this offense that has, I would say, a little bit more down-to-down complexity than you've seen, to me makes this feel a little bit more real than it's felt in years past. Because, I've covered the team now for 2 years, and one of the things that consistently comes up is is the offense doesn't look good. The offense doesn't look like it's ready to go. And then now when you watch this offense, the offense to me looks good. Like, it just conceptually looks good. The execution on a day-to-day isn't there necessarily, but conceptually it's right. And so when you see them passing off really intricate concepts, and when you see the rush getting home versus kind of, this slide with the chip help in the back, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, like that is going to happen in a game. That's going to happen in real life. And that's going to be a sack, or that's going to be a batted ball, or that's going to be a tight window throw. And hopefully the guy can knock it out. So I think, again, like, it's the defense doing stuff, but it's also the fact that they're going against something that has a little bit more complexity to it. And they're also doing that. So.
Yeah, and then we'll see, obviously, how they do against a completely different offense in Baltimore. Obviously, one in Cleveland on Friday. Hoffman Show, Team 980, with you live here, of course, on not just the Team 980, but on the free Odyssey app as well. You can stream live on YouTube at the Team 980 for this show. Full episodes to Take Command on 106.7, the fans page. You leave a comment on any of those places or the on-demand highlights we put up of both shows on my page at Craig Hoffman, and you just might see it tomorrow around this time, because that is when we will do Never Read the Comments, our weekly dive into the comments section, Wednesdays here on the radio. And then, of course, we do post that online as well at the Team 980 and at Craig Hoffman. Also, something that has become a staple for us, 6 o'clock every single night, the Commanders practice, in terms of training camp practice. Anyway, we have our training camp Pick 6 at 6, where we pick the 6 biggest storylines of the day. Obviously, the big one today was Ron Rivera's comments about Eric Bieneimy. We'll dive briefly back into those and get to the rest of the news of the day next. Hoffman Show, as we just told you, in all the places you can listen. Team 980, 106.7 HD2 on your HD FM radio, the free Odyssey app, YouTube, team980.com. And, well, if you're listening some other way, you can also listen that way too.
You can listen to the Team 980 on your...
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Day 12 of Commanders training camp today. Certainly one of the more dramatic ones out in Ashburn, thanks to Ron Rivera's comments about Eric Bieneimy, but also an important practice where a lot of stuff happened, and Rivera also revealed some more stuff in his press conference about the availability for certain players on Friday. So, of course, Friday, the preseason opener against Cleveland. So, he said, let's get to it. It is our training camp pick 6 at 6. We hit the funky music. We get going with the big story today, which is Ron Rivera saying this about Eric Bieneimy and his intensity.
Yeah, I mean, they have. And one of the biggest things is you know, and I had a number of guys come to me and I say, hey, just go talk to him. I said, understand what he's trying to get across to you, you know, and I think, you know, I think as they go and they talk and they listen to him, it's been enlightening for a lot of these guys. I mean, it's a whole different approach. You know, you get a different kind of player from the players back in the past, especially in light of how things are coming out of college football. So a lot of these young guys, you know, they do struggle with certain things. And a lot of you also got to take for where they've been. I mean, guys coming from certain programs are used to it. Guys come from other programs aren't as much. So, you know, us as a coach, you know, I kind of have to assimilate and get a feel for everybody. You know, Eric has an approach, and it's the way he does things, and he's not going to change, and because he believes in it. Jack has his approach. You know, having been a head coach, I think Jack has a tendency to try and figure guys out a little bit more, as opposed to, hey, this is it, this is the way it's going to be, that type of stuff. Where Eric hasn't had that experience yet.
I talked about this at length earlier, and it's pretty simple to me. This is not a big deal. I don't get why it blew up so much. That last part is the only part that rubs me the wrong way. To kind of, you know, self-congratulate is not exactly the right term, but be like, oh, yeah, I know how to do it. Jack knows how to do it because we've been head coaches, and Eric hasn't. I actually don't think Ron Rivera is any better at managing people, or either is Jack Del Rio, than Eric Bieneimy. Ron has stepped in it multiple times when it comes to people management over the years. He's also done handled a lot of tough situations well. I think some of the adaptation he talks about is true. Like, he's been tough on Jamin Davis, and, you know, they thought it was the correct thing to try to make Carson Wentz's life as easy as possible here. You know, obviously that one didn't really work out, but they showed an adaptability there, right? And Bienemy's like, this is how I am at all times. And I think there's actually a strength to that, to the consistency of that. But the overall idea that there are players that struggle to adapt, and that Bieneimy had to address that with some of them, like, that's fine. It is a process, and that's why Bieneimy, when asked about it multiple times, just continued to say, like, this is ultimately a good thing that guys understand what I want, and we ultimately get there together by reaching a new standard.
And so before it even goes anywhere, I make it the point to address the conversation. Because one thing, my job is to be very observant. I got to know the people that I'm discussing and working with. So my job is to address. If there's something that they may have an issue with, please, let's discuss this. Here's the reason why I felt a certain way. Here's why I said it. Now, okay, I put it back on the player. And you got to understand, we're in a grown man's business. We're in a grown man's world. My job is to make sure that I'm doing the best possible job of over-communicating clarity. I take a tremendous amount of pride in that. They also know when I'm getting on them, ain't nothing personal. What's personal is that I want us to win. I expect that particular player to be great at all times. I expect the effort to be a standard that's accepted by all of us. So when you're not reaching that, it's my job to address it. So sometimes they may like the highlights and the praise, but sometimes they may not like it. And I'm perfectly fine with that, because that's my job. Because if I ain't doing my job, my ass get fired. So it's my job and my responsibility to make sure that I'm getting our guys to do what I expect them to do.
And what that means is not just yelling at them and saying when they suck. It's building them up. It's making sure they understand why the thing they did is the correct thing. It's creating a consistency. Every single day, Bieneimy is the same guy because he wants every single day his players to be the same guys. He wants them to be consistently excellent at what they do. And that is something that might be different than what the coaching they've experienced in the past. And it's something that once you lose, I don't want to say like Bieneimy doesn't have grace, but once you lose that grace period of like, it's okay to mess up every once in a while, it's not that big of a deal, like that can be jarring. And adjusting to that very human thing to not be perfect is something that takes time. And what players want to do, or what Bieneimy wants to do, is bring players along, let them say like, no, like I don't hate you. I don't think you suck. It's just like, we got to do better. And making that communication effective is ultimately, I think, what's at the core of what's being talked about here. And I actually don't think anything Bieneimy said, and certainly anything Rivera said, took away from that, nor do I think the players are soft or they're bad or anything like that. Everyone's doing their job. And at times that involves conflict and friction. And the fact is, they've been working on resolving it. And they have plans and ways to resolve that conflict in a positive way. That's ultimately a good thing. If you want more on that, whole first hour on it, rewind in the free Odyssey app. The opening rant that I had on that also just published on YouTube, youtube.com/@CraigHoffman. A bunch of great calls in the first hour as well. You can rewind again on the Odyssey app or on the YouTube stream for all that. Okay, news from the day. Tress Way, they signed a new punter. Oh my God. For Tress Way? How could they possibly sign a new punter for Tress Way? Well, Tress has been dealing with some lower back tightness, and this was the actually kind of funny update from Rivera on Tress today.
Well, it means Tress is going to play, but he'll be the primary holder. Okay, so he's going to hold for the kicking operations. No, I told you, was I honest or not? Right?
I'm pretty sure he's looking straight at Nikki Giavallo with that, because she asked him about Tress yesterday. Is he going to play Friday? Yeah. Anyway, he continued.
Well, you didn't ask for context. You just asked, is he going to play or not? And I said, yes, he'll play. If you had said, is he going to punt, then I could have said no. I know, but he's also our primary holder for the operation. And that's probably the biggest thing that has to be. If anything's going to be good, it's got to be the operation. So he will, only thing he'll work on will just do the operation. But he is getting better. You know, he's done some more movements in terms of simulating the kicks right now. So it's just a matter of time.
Just so we're clear, I want everybody to listen for Nikki in the background here.
Well, you didn't ask for context. You just asked, is he going to play or not? And I said, yes, he'll play. If you had said, is he going to punt, then I could have said no.
Quote unquote. That's incredible. That is high quality press conferencing right there. Ultimately, the good news is Tress is going to be fine. I do think it's a little silly to put him out there as the holder, but I also get it in the middle of a kicking competition. You want the only different factor to be the kicker. So if it doesn't bother him, then okay, whatever. Apparently, Dax Milne had been taking some snaps as the backup holder. It's always a great question. One of these things as a beat reporter, you kind of file away somewhere in your brain is, who's the backup holder? Often it's the backup quarterback. I don't know if Jacoby Brissett's ever been a holder in his career. If my guy Teresh is listening, he will somehow have the video clip in 5 seconds because that is what he does. He's the most ridiculous background researcher that has ever walked the planet. But anyway, at Rush Manual on Twitter, if you're not following him, you should. You get all kinds of crazy information. Anyway, the point is, Trustway not going to punt on Friday. They signed a new punter whose name I don't remember, but he's wearing number 0. So that's fun. Logan Thomas, a little bit more serious on the injury update. Our pick 6 at 6. Here's number 3 in terms of storylines today, which really honestly could be number 1 in terms of long-term impact.
I think the biggest thing with Logan is we're going to be really smart about that. This is not close to what it was last year, but the thing that we are concerned with is we don't want to have it exacerbated by going out there too soon. So we've really done a lot in terms of work on the inside, the work on the bikes and stuff like that to avoid that type of situation until they feel comfortable with him in the next few days. We're not going to have him do anything outside yet.
So the thing with Logan Thomas that I think is worth monitoring is how many days does he miss and where does that put him in terms of his preparation for the season? That's worry 1. Worry 2 is if he's having problems now, what happens in the middle of the season when missing time means you could miss games? Like, if you miss a preseason game and you heal up and you're fine, okay. But if you're talking about this is an older guy, he's coming off injuries, all these different things, like, I just hope that this doesn't mean that, or this doesn't foreshadow nagging problems all season that are going to slow Logan Thomas down or result in him missing time. Because, frankly, then all the people that this offseason screamed about the tight end room would be right. Like, they made a choice to not address a room that, if things go well, should be fine, but was kind of thin. I think Curtis Hodges has had a very disappointing camp. I'm ready to go that after another drop today from like a not good. Like when we did our roster projection yesterday, we dropped him off the roster. Obviously, Armani Rogers was a big loss for this team. He was someone that I think could have been a starter and could be a starter for a long time in this league because of his athletic profile. Cole Turner's had a very good camp. But Logan Thomas and John Bates are the two guys that are kind of more complete. Bates obviously not nearly as explosive or impactful in the passing game, but a solid guy who reliably will catch the football. But a son of a gun as a blocker. Logan, the slider is shifted the other way, but he can do some of both. Turner, not much of a blocker. He's a big wide receiver, basically. So he blocks like a receiver. Receivers can block on occasion, but not going to be the guy you want to go heads up, old Logan Paulson style on a defensive end. Long story short, like, it's not necessarily this calf injury that worries me with Logan Thomas. It's that it could be indicative of larger problems. It's impossible to know right now. Certainly hoping it's not. It's also very possible it's a bump in the road, but something to keep an eye on as we move forward. All right, continuing with our training camp. Pick 6 at 6. The quarterback battle, if you will, still ongoing. And we saw more 1 reps from Jacoby Brissett today. We saw Sam Howell take some reps with the 2s. I guess they just were like, oh, well, we want to make sure our guy gets his reps. We want to give Brissett a couple of reps with the 1s. But that we can't just have him, not get the reps because Howell needs him. He's a young guy. So Eric Bieneimy asked about I don't want to call it a position battle, kind of the status of the quarterback position moving forward. I think that's a more neutral and fair way to set up this response from Bieneimy.
You know what? Both those guys, first of all, Jacoby's doing a hell of a job. Jacoby has had a great camp as well, okay? Jacoby has been competing.
I'm going to stop it and restart it just to say this. JP Finley asked this question. He had asked a previous one about Howell and then asked about kind of the status moving forward, which is why Bieneimy starts with Brissett and not Howell, because he had already talked extensively about Howell. Because I feel like when you hear that, it's like whoa, we go straight to Brissett. He had already talked about Howell and then addressed the position as a whole. So starting over. Here's Bieneimy.
You know what? Both those guys, first of all, Jacoby's doing a hell of a job. Jacoby has had a great camp as well, okay? Jacoby has been competing. He's been doing everything that a veteran quarterback is supposed to do. He's led. He's shown by example. You know, he's been a voice for Sam. He's been a great voice in that quarterback room. And he's been a guy that just allows his personality to show. And Sam has gravitated to that, and he's seeing what it takes. And you got to understand, Sam is one of those kids, every day is a new day for him because he's never done it. And this is the first time for him every single day. So now he's like a kid in the candy store. He get to observe what Jacoby is doing, and some of that stuff is feeding right off of Jacoby, and it's feeding right into him. And they have an outstanding relationship, in my opinion, but it's been fun watching this group grow together.
The relationship in your quarterback room can be really important because obviously, you know, Pritchard's there as the quarterback's coach, Zampese's around, but there's something about having a backup quarterback who you know is the starter has your back, and someone who as a backup, you know, you feel like you can talk to as the starter and they're not going to feel intimidated. Like you can truly work together, and especially when the backup is a veteran, that there is a mentor relationship there. And I think it's really cool to hear Bieneimy talk about these guys. And you know, in Kansas City where he came from, there was that relationship, right? Mahomes, for as great as he is, like Chad Henne was an excellent backup there. And, you know, are there a lot of guys that could have been good backups to Patrick Mahomes? And would Patrick Mahomes be great no matter who the backup is? Yeah, of course. But we're talking about the margins here. And improving on those margins is how you get better in the NFL. Everyone in the NFL is talented. Everyone's got good coaching, or, you know, some level of good coaching around them. Or how many factors can you put into the equation that are ultimately going to result in you being better? And a good relationship there is fantastic, and it's great to hear that Jacoby can take his experience, which, by the way, is vast, the guys he's worked with. It's a long list of successful quarterbacks with Tom Brady at the top of it, and say, hey, Sam, have you tried this? And there's the quote in the middle there from Bieneimy that I love, that for Howell, every day is a new day. Like, Brissett has lived these days before. He's been through training camp as a backup. He's been through training camp as a starter. He's been through training camp as a 3. He's learned from different coaches. He's played at different intensities. He's practiced at different tempos. Like, he's done everything in this league. At least that's what it feels like, because he's been around at so many different systems, so many different coaches. And so if he can take that institutional knowledge and give it to Howell, who has literally none of it. He has 1 year as the number 3 quarterback, afterthought, as everything was given to Carson Wentz in Scott Turner's system. If he can learn from not just the coaches, but from Jacoby, like that could help him a lot. And we'll see ultimately, you know, when the regular season rolls around, how quickly that maturation, how quickly that readiness comes, and if he's ready to go. I will say this, just kind of non-sound from the notebook, but this is number 4A on the list, if you will. The ball is not exactly flying out of these guys' hands with quickness, and especially with Howell recently. Now, some of this might be drill adjacent. It's something I want to talk about with Logan tomorrow on Take Command, as he's got a chance to go back and watch some of these things. And sometimes it's hard to tell, like, are they working on quick game right now? Or are they intentionally maybe trying to get Sam to his second read? So there's always manipulation of the drill that could lead to this happening. But it definitely doesn't feel like they're making plays. And there's been some really good stuff. He had a deep ball to McLaurin today that was incredible. He had this like kind of Pat Mahomes-esque run to your left, throwback right across your body completion today. And it's the kind of stuff that you go, whoa, that raises the ceiling of the offense. So I'm not saying that Sam Howell has been bad, but what has felt like it's missing is some of the quick, snappy, on-time, ball is out quick stuff that we saw earlier in camp. And I can't tell whether it's just because they're not working on it and they're working on more drop back stuff, or because Howell is missing reads, or, you know, just not seeing things fast enough and the ball's not getting out of his hands. But it is something I'm kind of watching, and I'm very curious Friday when they play against Cleveland, how quick the ball comes out. And that will also obviously be our first look at Bieneimy as a play caller, albeit a very, you know, milquetoast, pared down version of what we'll see in the regular season. All right, training camp pick 6 at 6. 2 more quickly here on the Hoffman Show. Obviously, a big part of what we expect to see from this offense is the RPO game, and Howell has played a lot in that in his career at North Carolina. So Rivera was asked how important that translation is and that familiarity is from one to the other with the RPO, run-pass option, if you're not familiar, game.
Well, I think it's important because it's something he did and had success with. One of the things that we've done is, we've looked at the things that he did and he did well. And we also took some of the things that he did last year, especially the Dallas game. And I know Eric has a plan with all that. And that's the best part about it, knowing what Sam does well. I mean, with Bieneimy out there, you've seen a couple of things that they've done in the past. They're doing again. So it's kind of cool to watch the growth and development of our quarterbacks.
Yeah, I will say too the familiarity with Howell and Brown, something that showed up. The RPO stuff, you see it, but it's not perfect. There was one today that I don't know whether it was an RPO or just a read option. I don't remember what was happening on the backside and whether there was routes being run or just blocks happening. But, this stuff happens fast. And I think it was Montez Sweat got in the backfield quickly, and Sam should have pulled it, and he handed it off. And, these decisions have to happen faster in the NFL than they do in college. So familiarity helps, but it's not going to be, a perfect thing. Last but not least, speaking of new guys, Emmanuel Forbes continues to get better each and every day. And Rivera was asked if he's seen him adapt to some of the different receivers he's covered, especially in the one-on-one drills.
You see him adapt to who he's playing. I mean, with Terry, you see him play a certain way because of Terry's quickness off the ball, because of Bieneimy, because of his long stride and his power. You see him work a little bit differently against him. So to watch the two different one-on-one plays that I'll watch, I'll see, okay, I see what he's doing here. I see why he's doing that against this guy, and I see why he's doing that against this guy. It makes sense, and you see that this is a young guy that's already studying his opponents, trying to figure out the best way to play these guys. So that's been impressive about him.
Forbes hands on a couple of more balls today, batted at least one down that I can remember. It's crazy, though, and I will say this. How many times you just look at him, and I know this is not the end-all, be-all of him playing football, but you look at him and you go, damn, those are some skinny legs.
I try not to, comment on his legs because I, too, have skinny legs. So,
but you don't got to play in the league, bro.
You're right.
But he's able to do it. This is the thing that to me is just so wild. You see it, and it's definitely an anomaly. It is. I understand why people around the league were they took him that high. Damn, we didn't have we have concerns. But he played in the SEC. There's big boys down in the SEC. Big physical receivers, fast guys that are strong. And when you match up against AJ Brown, just because you're as thick as Kendall Fuller doesn't mean you can't get bodied. Benjamin St. Juste, you can't get bodied. AJ Brown's a freak. He bodies everybody. But down in, down out against most dudes, he'll figure it out. He'll figure out a way to be fine. It's just, it's a market inefficiency because they found a guy that doesn't look the part and seems to be able to play it. And that's good scouting. To look past your own biases, to look at it and go, damn, those are some skinny legs. But he can play. Not a problem. That's how you win in this league, is to find the guy that others miss. So, damn, those some skinny legs. But they're attached to a very good cornerback, it seems like. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. When we get back, the Orioles are having the best season they've had in a long, long time. And they just did one of the most embarrassing things a Major League Baseball team has done in a long, long time. What the hell did they do to my friend Kevin Brown? We will discuss the absolute goofy, self-owned, I don't want to call it a catastrophe, but kind of a catastrophe. Next on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. So, obviously, tons of Commanders on the show today. If you missed any part of it, make sure you check it out. On the podcast feed, on YouTube stream, you can rewind there. On the Odyssey app, you can rewind there. I want to take a quick detour up 95, though, or the BW Parkway. Anthony, when you go to Baltimore, which is your preferred path? 95 North, BW Parkway.
So I'm coming from Georgetown Prep usually, so
You're a 95 guy.
yeah, 95.
Yeah, because you got to take the Beltway.
But if I'm coming from DC, I'll definitely take the Beltway.
Or the BW Parkway, you mean?
In BW Parkway, I'm bugging.
The correct answer is actually whichever way your preferred GPS, Waze, Apple, Google, whichever way they say.
That too. Yep.
Because there's no telling. There's no telling. Sometimes it's like, hey, you're going to swing all the way out to Annapolis and then go up. And you're like, if that's the fastest way today, I guess. Whatever you say, Jippus. Old GPS. Let's get that punched in before we leave. Anyway, the point is, the Orioles are an embarrassment. This is a team that is having the best season it's had in a long, long time. But unfortunately, they are owned by petty small men, and they are doing petty small things. And what was crazy about yesterday is how quickly this seemed to blow up. I started to see some tweets yesterday afternoon about Orioles broadcaster Kevin Brown. Now, full transparency, Kevin and I have been very close friends for a long time. Kevin was the sports director at WAER while I was at Syracuse, and I worked under him. We have remained close since we graduated. Like, when he's in D.C., we get together. When I'm in Baltimore and he's not traveling, like, we get together. We talk frequently. We're in a group chat with our other friend, Alex, who went to Syracuse with us, and we talk about everything in the world, sports, politics, music, movies, whatever. Most of the time when it's movies, it's Alex and Kevin talking and me nodding along. But that's fine. Like, Kevin is a close friend. That doesn't make me saying that this is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard not a valid opinion. There's no bias here. If I could imagine watching the video that I'm about to play the audio of for you, of any broadcaster who I didn't know, and being as equally confused, angered, concerned, and frankly amused as I am at what has happened to my friend. So on the July 23rd broadcast on Masson, Kevin opened the show by reading a stat that was in the Orioles media guide, the team-issued media guide, about the O's success in Tampa that season compared to the previous seasons. Here's how it sounded. Verbatim, uncut.
For the Orioles, Brandon Hyde has felt like this has been maybe the toughest ballpark to play in, but the Orioles have a chance to do something special today. They've already clinched at least a split in the series, winning 2 of the first 3, and they could pick up a series win behind Tyler Wells today. It's been a minute. The Orioles split a 2-gamer with the Rays in June. They had lost their last 15 series here at Tropicana Field. You have to go back to when our now colleague Brad Brock picked up the win in the series finale, June 25th, 2017, the last time the Orioles won a series here at St. Pete. Already got 3-2 at the Trop this year after winning 3 of 18 the previous 3 years combined. It is a stark difference, Ben, and it is not a bad Rays team. It's not like all of a sudden the Rays became slouches in the American League East. They've led this division every day, but now 2, and the Orioles once again are back alone in first place.
So the number of people, Anthony, that when I retweeted this clip last night, the number of people that tweeted me back and said, I'm confused, what's the thing he got suspended for, was many. Was many. Because there's nothing in there that's suspendable in any way. Apparently, according to Awful Announcing and others like Brit Giroli at The Athletic have done plenty of reporting on this. John Auerand, our friend from Sports Business Journal. John Angelos, the managing partner of the Orioles, thought that Kevin highlighting the contrast in this season, where he was essentially complimenting the team for how well they have done in a place they have struggled, and those previous seasons where they have struggled, made them look cheap. Editorial comment incoming. Editorial comment incoming. The Orioles are cheap. The set at Masson looks like it hasn't been updated. Never mind. I'm not going to do this. I don't need to take cheap shots. I'm just going to keep moving. Here's what I will say. I have been concerned. There's an actual serious topic here. Kevin is supposed to be back on the broadcast on Friday. I read a piece from, maybe it was Awful Announcing, from one of the broadcast coverage things, proposing that this might actually be a good thing for Kevin's career. This is a story that's getting covered on SportsCenter tonight. It's one, Kevin has also been doing broadcasting for ESPN on a national scale for years at this point. But he is in line to receive more high-profile assignments, and that perhaps this even solidifies that. He is now, this has increased his name value. I don't know if you got this last night, Anthony, but did you get an Apple News alert about this story?
I did.
Do you realize how many people get Apple News alerts? That's when you know a story has big time broken through. Big time broken through. And I can imagine Kevin sitting at home getting that and being like, oh, wow. And that's the thing. From the time that I saw some initial tweets yesterday to the time that, last night I get that alert, it had blown up in a way because broadcasters around the country, Michael Kay on the Yankees broadcast, Gary Cohen on the Mets broadcast, Brown's old broadcast partner at the Syracuse Chiefs, Jason Bieneimy on the White Sox broadcast, on and on down the list of Major League broadcasters across the country started to talk about this and how absurd it is. And that actually, to me, is a healthy and good thing on the larger, more serious point that I was starting to make and that I will make now. Teams owning their own broadcast rights is less troubling than controlling the coverage overall, right? We understand that teams have media departments now, and they do good work, a lot of them. We had Santana on the show earlier. Technically, he's state media right now. He works for the team. Logan works for us, but he also works for the team. And that's fine. I think most teams let their analysts do analysis as long as it stays about the game. That's what made covering the Commanders, by the way, very tricky because no one that worked for the team wanted to comment on the owner because technically that was their boss. And does it occasionally rub, someone in a Ron Rivera's position the wrong way, or if, the Yankees.com writer says something critical of decision-making by Aaron Boone, does that rub them the wrong way? Yes, but it's kind of accepted, but there is a little bit of, optimistic tint to the coverage. But when it truly becomes state media, when it is fully and totally controlled by the teams themselves, which unfortunately, in my opinion, is the case for most game broadcasts at this point that are not national, I think we lose something as viewers. Media is supposed to be objective in its approach. That doesn't mean that we don't all have our biases, we're all human. It doesn't mean that people don't give opinions. It doesn't mean that people don't hold grudges. It doesn't mean, frankly, to be blunt, that some people aren't just bad at the job. Some people who are analysts or analyze the game because they've been doing it a long time or because they played, or whatever, whatever their qualifications are or aren't. Some people just stink at looking at basketball or football or baseball and explaining what's happening. Same as any other job. What the old saying goes, half of doctors finish in the bottom half of medical school. I don't think that actually checks out math-wise because I would hope that some of the people that finish in the bottom half of medical school don't pursue actually being a doctor. But the sentiment is appreciated. And it's only going to get worse. We only lose as viewers and fans if saying something as benign as what Kevin said, that wasn't even critical, that actually was praising the current team, is seen on some kind of referendum by thin-skinned owners who don't actually get how any of this works. Because here's the other thing. The thing about state media, if you will. Nobody trusts it if it's not honest. Nobody trusts media if they don't think that they're getting something that is truthful. That's not to say propaganda doesn't work on occasion. There's a long history of very sinister and serious events that have been built on propaganda. There's a reason, I don't want to get too dark here, but I'm not going to make that analogy. Let's just say there's a long list of history where, yes, the efficacy of propaganda is very evident, right? And I'm not saying that anything that any team is doing is going to have those types of consequences. I'm going to leave that there, the point being made that propaganda can be effective without going any deeper. But the point is that most people, I think, especially as sports fans, where the circumstances are not dire, that we're not talking about, life, death, war, peace, health, sickness, the serious things in life. We're talking about sports where it's fun. The stakes are much lower. Actually demands that people want to be told the truth. They don't necessarily want to just hear what the team line. People care too much in that way. They're invested in a way that actually demands the truth. And so what team owners, if they're going to continue for the obvious financial reasons that it makes sense to own your own broadcast rights, to have that power over them, what you're better off doing as a team owner is spending the resources to do it right and keeping your hands off. Of course, there's a level of professionalism that's going to come, but this stuff is Banana Republic BS. This stuff is so amateur hour. This stuff is so small. And what you see in the reaction is that there is not a single person I have seen that has anything negative to say about Kevin, which is good because there's nothing bad to say about Kevin. And I've known the man for a decade. Honestly, one of those people that, I've known me a long time, and there's some things that you could say bad about me, and I'd be like, yep, that's correct. Kevin Brown's one of those annoying people, you son of a gun, if you're listening, which I doubt he is. He's probably sitting at home just being like, I'm going to prepare for my game on Friday, that's the annoying thing. He's such a damn good person, and he's so good at his job, which is why the Orioles, he doesn't have to say anything. They look like idiots here, and it's because they acted like it. And I'm glad Kevin's going to be back on the job on Friday, and I hope moving forward that he gets better because he deserves it. But God, what a petty, small, stupid thing to do. What a petty, petty, small, stupid thing to do. All right, when we get back, real things, real people said into real microphones. As promised yesterday, Klay Thompson's reaction to the Jordan Poole trade on our list. That's next on the Team 980.
Here's what's trending on the...
Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Time for real things, real people said into real microphones in just a moment. Anthony, anything that we want to note for the show tomorrow? Obviously, it'll be Wednesday, which means it's Never Read the Comments Day. Anything else to note for the show?
I don't think so.
Okay. Pick 6 at 6, last one for the week.
Yep.
We'll be recording a fresh episode of Take Command, so we might play that. We might play some of that on Thursday, though. Might hold on to that one because obviously we'll be previewing the game.
We might get back to our player.
Oh yeah. So yeah, Anthony had this really good idea yesterday. I'll finish the sentence here. That's what we do around here. Finish each other's sentences, which is better than finishing each other's sandwiches. I don't know. I guess if you have some extra and you want to give it to me, anyway, different conversation. The point is, Anthony had this great idea yesterday to look back at the class of 2021 and say which player can make a huge jump in year 3. I think we could do that with the class of 2020, class of 2020 in year 4, 2022, and then obviously we could predict which 2023 players are going to have breakout years. So that could be fun to do tomorrow for sure. I'm sure there'll be more. I'm sure Rivera will get asked about the reaction to his comments in the morning, and I'm sure we'll have more on that. So that's tomorrow. Right now, though, it is time for Real Things. We got 3 good ones today. Let's see if we can get them all in.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
All right, just picking up where we left off, I told you Gary Cohn, the Mets announcer, had some things to say about the controversy with Kevin Brown and the Orioles. Here was Cohen yesterday on SNY.
Let me just say one thing to Baltimore Orioles management. You draped yourself in humiliation when you fired John Miller, and you're doing it again. And if you don't want Kevin Brown, there are 29 other teams who do. It's a horrendous decision by the Orioles. I don't know what they were thinking, but they've gotten exactly the reaction that they deserve. And it's just a shame because the Orioles are playing so well, and now they've diverted attention from that and now made themselves a laughing
stock. That's what he said. Anthony, I don't know why I did the last segment. Why didn't we just play that? And I just play that on a loop. He said it perfectly in 30 seconds.
That's a great question.
Some producer you are, Anthony.
I put it in the folder. I thought you were going to see it.
That's true. You did put it there. That's very well put by Gary Cohn. Good job, Gary. All right, a couple Warriors things. Steph Curry singing and Klay Thompson actually talking about Jordan Poole getting traded to the Wizards. Promised you this one yesterday. So here it is. As promised, Klay Thompson on the, what do they call it, the Project P podcast. It's Paul George's podcast.
It hurts to see Jordan go. That's the nature of the beast. He was homegrown. I saw him put the work in. I saw him go 2 for 15 in the game, but then he would be in the dungeon, which we call our practice facility because there's no windows, getting shots up right after the game. I'm like, man, this kid's going to be special. And we wouldn't have won the championship without him. Like, he was so important to us when Steph went down. Jordan is forever going to be cherished in the Warriors lore just for what he did and helped bring us back to where we needed to go. And I know he's going to do great things in Washington. And it felt good seeing him last week. It was weird seeing him in some Wizards gear, but that's like Steph and I's little bro.
What kind of player you think he's going to turn out to be now for the Washington Wizards?
Oh, he definitely got all-star potential. You saw it when he made that finals run. Average 18, shooting 50, 40, 90. Like, that's hard to do. So I'm excited to watch him and Kuz. Those are going to be the swaggiest buckets ever.
I think, honestly, when we make Dave's open for the year for the Wizards, we might have to include, like, let's write that down to remember, include Klay swaggiest buckets ever, because that's a pretty good bite. And then there's some Dave Johnson play-by-play mixed in. Whatever song we got to figure out from the Wizards what song they're going to use for their intro video this year.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll get to work in our magic.
All right, baby.
A little beep bop 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 boop bop bop bop. And if we're lucky, it'll sound as good as Steph Curry singing Paramore at the Chase Center. This is real. Steph Curry on stage at the Chase Center last night, the Warriors' home arena, with Haley Williams singing with Paramore. That song slaps. It will slap forever. And anybody that wants to fight me about it can actually go fight Clinton Yates because he will fight harder than I will.
What's the name of that song?
Misery Business is the name
Oh,
of that
yeah,
song.
that's the song I started the show with.
Yeah, you did. Paramore's got some bops. Certified bops.
All right. Do you like Paramore more? Maroon 5 more? What are some other, like, the Jonas Brothers?
I feel like you've just named 3 very different artists. Maroon 5 and Paramore.
What about One Direction?
They're not remote. You've gotten farther and farther away from Paramore with every single artist.
Sorry. All right, Green Day.
That's a little bit better comparison because like Paramore definitely has like a strong rock vibe. Maroon 5's got some of that, but they're kind of more pop rocky. And then you just went like straight boy band pop.
My apologies.
I think Paramore probably out of all of those. Maroon 5's got a pretty good catalog though. So there's that. That's our show for today. We'll try to do better tomorrow. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980.
The Team 980 is always live on the free Odyssey app, presented by Regis.